Ardis and Eric are going to be back out here talking with you about leveraging AI for student success, and it is going to be an incredible session. So I'm going to have them come out now. So everyone put your hands together again for Ardis and Eric.
You guys are seeing a lot of me today, huh? I promised I'm not going to be around tomorrow, so I'm just...
You get to see me a little more tomorrow, though. I got one tomorrow.
We're so excited about all this stuff that we wanted to show it off. All right. Are we on? Yep. OK. So we're going to jump right into it. We have about an hour for this session, but hopefully we'll take a lot of Q&A. I know there was a bunch of questions around portals before, and kind of these are new use cases for Element. So we want to make sure that we kind of go into some more details for each one of them. So when we think about student success at Element, and when you think about student success, there's different use cases that you're trying to accomplish around this. Maybe we'll just wait another 30 seconds. We have a few more folks kind of coming in. Hey, no preamble on this one. I jumped right in. All right. So there's a couple of use cases. So a lot of folks tell about, hey, student success. But really, the student success component, what we've learned by talking to a lot of you, and we learned over the past couple of years as we start understanding what you guys are actually doing on the other side, we're trying to fit them into some more generic ways of how do you accomplish those same things, right? So case management is, you know, we call them tasks at Element, but case management is a big use case for student success. Being able to handle a student's request or being able to kind of keep track of their remediation plans or whatever it is, right? There's multi-step components. Think about it as a project or case management, notifying different people that are interested in there. So case management is very, very important around student success. And there's whole systems that are built around just that case management component. Somebody goes in, fills in a case, or fills in an alert, and now there's a whole thing that gets kicked off. Well, in Element, we have them. We're going to talk about that as well. You think about advising, right? So advising is a big component of that student success journey. And AI assistance for courses and exploration and academic advising, we're going to show how you can take this data that is catalog data and make really interesting recommendations to that particular student based on outcomes, based on connecting different job components together, skills. AI is really, really good at making those different connections and making those recommendations. So we feel that advising is an area where we're going to talk a little bit more about and specifically show some use cases there on how we're thinking about it. Then you move down to proactive outreach, right? It's this idea that we can now, of course, we call them, like there's some early alerting components in there, but proactive outreach is all about how do we get that student to move through their journey without, nudges before they actually do something wrong, right? Or they fail a class, or they don't show up, or they're not on track to graduate. So how do we proactively nudge them along? And this proactive outreach, we feel like is a really good use case that falls into that student success side. And then personal alerts. We call them, we can talk about, in this case, like early alerts that, again, there's different signals that come in, but let's call them personal alerts, right? This idea that they need to be notified of things when something happens, and monitor their journey, right? So really monitor their courses and monitor their journey throughout, their academic experience. So these alerts of how they're doing, where they are, that's a use case. Again, we can call it early alerts, but that's a use case that we're kind of understood that's necessary. And then the last thing is around this personal support hubs, right? And when we talk about support hubs, a lot of you have different products that the student goes into in order to check their classes, or in order to check notifications or messages or anything that's part of their ecosystem, in order to schedule an appointment or to talk to an advisor or to, to see kind of their academic plan. And then, so we want to think about this as part of our portals, right? So we're going to talk about each one of this, but the first one we're going to talk about is that a student portals that we announced, and this is going to be the central place on how that student is going to get all of the different support that we're thinking about. So we announced this, we went through some details around student portals, but for those of you who aren't here, I want to iterate some more of this. So AI assistants are helping us with the advising, supporting, and coaching in here. So we can scope that down to the advising, support, and coaching. We can do peer advising, we can do academic advising, we can do a lot of types of advising in there. But that's how we're thinking about the support component with AI assistants being part of the portals. Bolt Discovery is an AI engine that we talked about that's being built right in there, right within the portal. And sometimes students just want questions, right? They have a question about something. They want to understand kind of this deep data that's the catalog or that's something, or maybe different resources across the institution, right? So they want to understand those resources, and getting those answers sometimes it's very, very easy through that discovery engine, which can actually point them now to those different resources or links, and that's how we would do it. We talked about courses a little bit during our, but this is an area where we're going to go into, but catalog and enrollment and courses are super important as part of that portal and that student success journey, having all of that stuff in there as they kind of progress through. Student tasks. We talked about, I don't know, did we talk about student tasks?
No, we're going to talk about student tasks now.
Okay. So we'll go into the task component, but student tasks, think about them as like assigning tasks to that student. So you're doing something around case management, but now you can assign those to a student, and we'll jump into that and see how that's going to work. And then this idea of my network, the support student network, again, that's a single place that they go into. Push notifications about getting this really real-time alerts. I think Michael was sitting here from TSTC, and he mentioned, hey, I can get rid of my emergency notifications. And I'm like, okay, we didn't think about that use case, but I guess you can do that now. So that's really, really interesting, right? So now you have a central place where you can push all this stuff as a separate channel, appointments and scheduling all that stuff together. And then the last thing that we talked about portals, or we think about portals, they're self-installed. There's no app store, and they're actually branded to that institution. You saw a preview of this. We're about, I would say, 70% there in terms of releasing.
Yep.
And I think Ty talked a little bit about how over the next couple of months we'll refine them. We'll make them accessible to a few beta users over the next weeks so we can get that feedback, and then we'll have them available for release hopefully by the fall. But by that September, October, I'm not going to make any promises. But so I wanted to, when we talk about the portals, like there's different components in there. Bolt Discovery plays a huge role in that because he has all the knowledge base and course information. Eric is going to be able to kind of switch over and kind of show you a use case of how current students, this is not part of the portal, is it? Are you plugged in?
I am plugged in.
Okay. Let's do it again.
I am one, right? There we go.
It's the different.
All right, everybody. So this is Bolt Discovery again. Ty showed you this earlier today in that portal experience, so it'll be built into portals. This is our landing page component, but they work exactly the same. Yeah. So from a student success perspective, now students can quickly come and find information or resources for on-campus resources or learn more about their program in a way that, again, going to a number of individual web pages or doing that many link site search, let's face it, if they don't find the answer that they're looking for in 2 or 3 minutes, they're on to the next thing, and now their success may be at jeopardy because they haven't taken that step, right? So here, We've got a student who's in that graphic design program we showed a little bit earlier, and can you tell me more about those advanced courses? This student is starting to think ahead about what they're doing later in their student journey.
Is your Wi-Fi working?
Wi-Fi is being a little slow today.
Are you sure you're connected?
Yeah.
All right. Restart. Live demo, folks.
Live demo, folks. Live demo.
You want to try connecting to your phone really quick?
Yeah. I can't do it quick because I'm not the same Apple ID.
All right. We'll try it again.
Let's try this again.
So how many of you are thinking about, there we go, we got it.
We got it.
Phew, I didn't have to ask the question. I was thinking about it.
So here you can see that this student now has information about those courses that are coming later in the journey. Maybe they're interested in what they're going to do next, right? So now we can ask something, because we have all that course data, all that catalog data, we can ask something about prerequisites. So for GRD 222 GRA, I think I'm losing my socket. So I can quickly find, because your campus networks are way better than the Wi-Fi here, I can quickly find the courses that I need to take before taking that course, and I can even find out about outcomes. So here we talked a little bit about some of the predetermined follow-up questions. But
They're not predetermined.
They aren't predetermined because the AI.
They're dynamic live based on the question and the response that you're getting. The engine is thinking about what is the next possible thing that can be asked about this topic, and then it's recommending. So if you look over here, you can say, can you tell someone about the prerequisite, or can you tell me about tell me more about it? What are topics covered? What are some of the core requisites? Obviously, you ask about prerequisites. What are core requisites? Things like that.
And now I can get information about careers and that outcomes journey as well. So you can see how quickly the student can interact with Bolt Discovery and find this sort of thing. And whether it's program exploration or the next steps, we can also do campus resources. If you've got resources around food insecurity or any of those things, students can quickly find those things. They're not buried in a website somewhere where they're unaware and can't find that information quickly.
Harry, can you quickly show, so we're showing you the front end of this, right, and all of this data, but this is all very transparent to the administrators as well. So you can actually see where this lives, and you can actually see all of the questions that are coming in from that, and it's exactly the same thing. So you can see what is being asked, what that student is asking for, and these threads live on, right? So they live on. So what can happen now from a student success perspective, they can come in and say, hey, I did all this search, this kind of thread, and I asked the AI a whole bunch of these questions, and I'm going to share this. I'm going to share it, and I'm going to make it shareable. So I can just copy the link, and now I can go to a new, and I can send it to, if you look over here at the end, we can now send it to anybody, and they're going to be able to pull in that same thread that student had, and now that advisor or somebody else can see exactly what the thought process was, what the questions was that the student was asking, and when they come in, they can now pick that up, that conversation from there, and say, hey, you might have thought about this thing a little bit differently or that thing a little bit differently. So this ability of sharing it can kind of cut down in kind of the back and forth email, can cut down on the recommendations because it's actually there and can be available. And of course, they can send it to anybody else, and they can continue the conversation as part of that session, right? And now we can kind of open up, kind of create a new thread in there as well.
So what's really interesting about the sharing is in the short time that we've been talking about discovery, we've had some of you actually suggest this, is that the advisor or a counselor or somebody in an office can actually start a discovery thread, right? And ask about a resource or ask about something, and you can use the share feature to send it to the student and get them going on that discovery journey.
Yeah, exactly. They can ask questions. So I kind of reversed that, but
and it works both ways, right? The student can share it with you. You can share it with the student. The student can share it with, family or friends or other people in their support network. And if I were to start, let's say I'm the advisor or the support person, and I send that thread to the student, when the student starts engaging with that thread, we actually start a whole new thread under that student. So you could actually send the same thread to multiple students, and then as they start engaging with it, they kind of fractal out and start their own journeys, which is really interesting use case for discovery.
Yeah. So think about this now as dynamic Q&As that you can go through and build, and then you can even link them from your website or landing pages or wherever, and they're going to live forever. So somebody can just pick it up from there and go. Cool. All right.
All right.
So that's Bolt Discovery in kind of the use case of student success, and it's going to be part of the portal, so those sharing capabilities, all of that stuff is going to be in there. Now, when we think about AI assistance for advising, right, we have 4 different assistant types in here around advising. So academic advisor, which provides the guidance, course selection, kind of the requirements based on that course catalog. So it's basically tuned in the instructions, and kind of the job description of that is to be helpful in the academic component. Career advisor, all about careers, outcomes, like what's next, kind of the coaching component. There's a campus life advisor that helps with basically the acclimation to kind of the college life, university life, kind of campus resources, events, clubs, other aspects of the college experience, right? So, but you have to load that information in, which we can grab from your website, internal network, or internal, I guess, portals or whatever. So you can load that in, and then those advisors can actually provide that information. And last but not least is peer advisor. This is super important because it's really a peer-to-peer. It's meant to be more friendly, kind of offering advice, insights on how to deal as being a student with a lot of the changes going on. You saw this morning, Melina mentioned that students usually have to deal with a lot of changes and kind of shut off from new processes and new things just because they're constantly kind of need to learn new stuff. So having that peer advisor they can go to as a confidant and say, hey, I really would, I mean, the use cases there are infinite, but the acclimation component is really important here without the judgment and without the having to reach out to actually human person on the other side.
So we can take a little bit of a look at some assistance in action here. I know Petter and Ardis showed you some earlier today, but specifically around student success. So here is Penny, and she is our financial aid specialist here. And one thing that's really interesting is that the titles that we give the assistants are customizable, right? So
whatever you call them.
Whatever you call it, if you want it to reflect, the titles on your institution, you can certainly do that, and we, badge it with the AI badge. So here's a student who's thinking about dropping a course, and I'm sure we're all hopeful that students are thinking this deeply about how dropping a course will impact their aid, but this student is kind of in that top 15% that are going to think that way. So let's see how our financial aid specialist handles this. So it certainly can impact your financial aid, right? A lot of factors there. It's kind of suggesting I might want to talk to an advisor. And I can say, you know what? I want to just keep talking to Penny because she's pretty good. I think it's me.
We went black?
We went black. There we go. All right.
Don't move.
Don't move. Everybody take a deep breath in. Mostly me. So I asked Penny if I can keep talking to her, and she has given me a lot of things to think about around, I might have to return some of those funds. I might have future eligibility for aid, right? So these are things that if the student, 9 o'clock at night, 5 in the morning, whenever it is on their mind, they can get this information really, really quickly, right? So now that I've got this information, the student can say, well, maybe there's other alternatives, right? Because the reason I'm thinking about dropping the class is...
You're not using your voice, Eric.
I'm not. I don't have the voice one enabled here.
Okay.
The reason I'm going to drop the class is Mondays are really hectic.
I don't know if that sentence makes sense, but maybe they'll understand.
I understand that
There we
hectic
go.
schedules can be... Don't second guess Penny here,
Penny's
Ardis.
good.
Penny's
Penny's
good.
good.
Penny's good. And this is like, we hope that the students are using this well of a sentence structure, right? When
Yes.
they're talking to the assistants
Hey,
and in
man.
chat. So, so here we've got this. So, hey, are there other sections? Maybe I don't want to drop that class. Maybe if I can just reschedule, right? Reschedule that class to a different section, different day. And here it's gone into the courses area here, and it's found something for Thursday, on Thursdays instead of that Monday, Wednesday class. I think Thursdays would be great. And did Petter hear me? Because the microphone just appeared. And now I can go ahead and say, hey, I'd really like to schedule an appointment with an advisor, please.
I don't think your audio is plugged in on the way back, so it's all right. No,
Yeah. And
there we go.
She's handed me off to Dean, who's our academic advisor, who's going to connect me with that appointment. So you can see, again, how these specialized assistants with handoffs and working together in teams, just the way that we all work together at our campuses, right? I may not be able to schedule that appointment with the academic advisor if I'm working in financial aid, but now, I would pass that off, I would hand that off. The new assistants work exactly the same way, and now I could go through the flow to continue to book that appointment, integrated right in, book that appointment online, and be ready to go. And change my schedule, not drop that class that might have put me at risk for losing aid or up against SAP or up against not graduating on time. So that's a little bit about our financial aid and academic advising assistants. And, Ardis mentioned the other assistants that we have, and we can talk to them as well. So let's take another one, maybe a little less intense. But here we have Austin, who's our involvement and athletics specialist. And
Wow, that's a big title.
that's a big title. We love big titles in higher education. So we've got some things, and maybe I'm concerned about, I don't feel like I'm connecting with people on campus. So
Where do I go to party? That's a good question. Do that, Eric. Come on.
all right.
Eric is going to kill me afterwards because I'm changing his script right now.
So look, we've got lots of things you can do at Forsyth Tech. Sorry, guys. For specific party events, you might want to check with Student Activity Center or join clubs. So what kind of clubs do you have?
Sorry, we didn't fit in the party schedule. Devin will
Yeah,
provide that
yeah.
after this.
If we could get that into the knowledge base, Devin, that would be great.
Dueling pianos. That's right.
Yeah.
We should have done that.
We should have
Eric. There
done
we
dueling
go.
pianos. So again, we're bringing up this information. The students are able to access this information. And as a student affairs guy, I know what our student affairs websites used to look like. Trying to find information about clubs and activities, really challenging at times. So now all of this is really available conversationally right for the students. And again, this happens to be on a landing page. All of these tools can be in your own .edus. And of course, they will come to portals later this year.
All right. I love it. I wish I had that when I was in college.
Right?
Yeah. I was a first generation college student, so like everything was trying to figure it out for the first time. There's not a lot of support, so these things are amazing in terms of, and I was stubborn, right? I had the mentality of like, you know what, like I can figure this shit out myself, so I'm not going to ask anybody, and I immigrated here when I was 14, so it was like the mentality is like, no, it's like the macho thing, it's like, you don't want to ask anybody, so this stuff is really, really impressive when you think about how, how accessible it makes like a first generation or somebody who's not necessarily kind of wired that way in order to ask those. And we're becoming more and more kind of internally focused. So communication is a kind of a huge deal right now. So anyways, sorry for going on a tangent there, but case management is what we talked about before. So we're going kind of counterclockwise right now to focus on that. When we talk about case management, we talk about subtasks. This is a use case. So now our tasks you can assign them to an internal person. But what we did is we said, okay, you know what? If we extend this and now we can have subtasks, we can now make it as a full project management component where you have a project and then you have all the tasks that need to be done at the project, and you can have even tasks for those tasks. You have notifications, and then you can check them off. And you have a full kind of case management system in there, and different use cases can be accomplished by that. We also said, you know what, nobody's really going to go in and kind of put all these things together. So we build task templates, meaning that you build that task template or that case management or that use case once, and then you can automate it. So every time you go in a workflow, you can say, give me a project or case, and here's the template, and now it uses all of those templates to essentially create, you can create a 5-task project or case, or 100, it doesn't matter. You'll kind of copy that over and you'll put that in that context. The other thing that we talked about is this contact task, about assigning them to students. We didn't have this before, or students or external contacts, right? So it's a new type of task, can be assigned to somebody externally. We didn't have this before. It was all about internal. Well, now we're moving it externally. So you can combine, mix and match. You can say the first 2 tasks for this case are assigned to the student, and then the second 2 are assigned to the advisor, and the last one is perhaps assigned to the case manager, whatever it is, right? So you can mix and match, and you can see kind of the project progression in there. And then you can have special subscribers. So subscribers are attached to each one of those tasks, and they get notifications when things get completed and when things change, right? When the status is changed, they get notifications, or they get notifications when something is due, and they now need to know when that thing is due. So we'll take a quick look at that stuff, and Eric has pulled it up.
So everything that Ardis just talked about, well, 3 of the 4 is available today. You can jump in and do subtasks. Subtasks can have subtasks, and subtasks of subtasks can have subtasks. But to quote Petter, please don't do that. But that's possible. We released task templates earlier this spring. How many of you guys are using task templates already? All right, a couple of hands. Don't be shy. Raise them up. Perfect. So again, really powerful, particularly for these more complex case management scenarios where you have these standardized flows that you want yourselves and now in the future students to be able to do. And of course, the subscribers that Ardis mentioned, keeping people in the know. So for student success, Some of this might be faculty members or other people who aren't doing the tasks, aren't engaged in the particular case, but need to know when certain steps are resolved or updated.
Yeah, they don't even need to log in, right? They get an email with that notification.
Right, they don't even, it's all email based. So here you can see creating a new task, and we can come in here and create or pick from our templates. So if you're not using templates, right at the top of the screen, you can pick your template. So here we have a new case around low midterm grade intervention, right? So this is something that will be wholly possible, and we'll talk about courses in a minute, as we start receiving more signals around individual courses. But you could get that automation where this student has a low midterm grade, and you can see this all pre-populated in, right? We're assigning this to the academic advising team. Again, could be an individual, and so on and so forth. Down here, you can see that we've added subtasks. And here are a couple of subtasks that, in this case, the advisor has to accomplish. But it was literally 1 or 2 clicks, and I created this whole multi-level task template here. In the future,
now this is possible, so you don't have to do them one by one. This is automation, so in workflows, you can do exactly the same thing. You can just set it up and say, use this template, and fill in the context of that user as well.
So we'll look at workflows in just a minute with some things there. So just to give you kind of conceptually how we're thinking about the contact tasks, they'll be right here living alongside all your other tasks with some additional filters. And basically, there'll be a master toggle at the top that says this is a staff task or this is a student task. And there'll be a few things that are slightly different with student tasks, but student tasks will come with their own set of priorities, their own set of statuses, and their own set of types. So the student never has to see that like first prospect phone call task that you got, type that you guys have, right? So they will live in the tasks module, but they will really be kind of 2 independent features that live very closely kind of in the same feature neighborhood, if you will. So it's really exciting, and as Ardis mentioned, you can mix and match, and hey, the student needs to do this, and when that's done, then the advisor will take this additional action. As far as workflows and automations go, here you can see exactly what Ardis was talking about, where we can have a join segment trigger, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk about courses and some of the great data that's going to come in around courses. But that course data will allow us to have students that have a low midterm grade. We want to kick off this series. So we're doing some proactive outreach, which we haven't gotten to yet, but we've got some proactive outreach going where we're sending that student an SMS message. And that SMS message can be from one of the AI assistants. So when they respond, they're talking to Dean, the AI academic advisor, right? Because our assistants are multi-channel. So you can set up that flow. In the meantime, while we're working on our proactive assistance, you can accomplish a lot of this in the workflow engine today.
Yeah.
And then here you can see this concept of creating a task. And actually, I can do this. We'll add one more. And when you go to create a task, you can create, just like I could from the tasks menu, I can create from a template here as well. So I could say, hey, I want to be able to take this particular task and build it as part of a workflow using, and all the subtasks related to it as well. So that is a little bit about contact tasks, subscribers, and subtasks, and how you put them all together for case management in Element 451.
All right, so courses. This is a big one that we want to focus on a little bit more today. We talked about how courses are going to have sections, and we'll talk about the data model for it. They're going to be available throughout Element, the portals, and then they're going to integrate with our SIS. So we wanted to show you this and how we're thinking about courses, which is not just one thing, it's multiple things together, right? And we're showing you this because it's a hierarchy of different objects and how we're modeling them in Element. The first thing is courses, right? So course name, subject, descriptions, grading, like these are the different properties that we want to model that course around. And then the next thing that we want to do is say, okay, for each one of these courses, there's sections that are available for that. So that's a particular point in time, things like type, instruction mode, there's a term, there's a start end date, meeting. So that's an instance of that particular section. And then the last, so meeting, daytime, current, max enrollment. So they think about sections and like classes that are scheduled at a particular point in time. They belong to a course. And then the last thing is, how do we relate that to a student? And that's around enrollments. So now we have a student that is enrolled in that course. So think about it this way. They're enrolled in the course at a particular time and schedule for a particular course title. So in enrollments, we'll have obviously the status of that student, when they last attended, date is, the total absences, maybe a percentage of those absences for the total time. That's a calculated property in there. Last login to LMS, the total LMS active time. If we have the LMS URL in there, I think we're modeling it this way, right? And depending on what systems we're using, we're going to be able to kind of do that and point to those different ones. Current grade that they have and maybe a final grade. So you can now see how we can use this, and these are going to be first-party objects and first-party data on the student's profile. So you can see how you can now make them available for triggers, for segments, for a lot of different things. And you can start triggering things that Eric is mentioning around on, I'm registered for this semester for this many courses because I know exactly what the term is, and in this particular sections, and hey, by the way, here's the instructor name or whatever it is for that particular class that's part of it. So we thought that this gives you a little bit more clarity on what we're thinking around courses. Is not just the course, but it's like a number of different things that are coming together that give you the ability to do a lot of that segmentation.
And the way we've sort of built this, and the reason we built it in this hierarchy, is the concept of you can sort of pick and choose some of these things, right?
Yeah.
So think of like courses, the courses level as your catalog level, right?
Yeah.
So all your descriptions, all the curriculum, that sort of thing. And if all you wanted to do was feed that data in, this data will be then available to Discovery and the assistants,
Yep.
as well as other things, right? Then you can move down to the sections. So courses might come from your catalog, sections probably come from your SIS, right? Where you're talking about, again, that specific section in that particular term.
Or the LMS.
Or the LMS, you could do it directly from the LMS as well. So if you've got an SIS to LMS integration and you just want to pass the LMS data back to Element, you can do that as well. And then finally, enrollments. And as Ardis said, this is really where like the sizzle comes in, because kind of the early alerts process is very like, oh, I'm a faculty member and let me pull this lever because I haven't seen Eric in 3 weeks, right? That's good and that's better than nothing, right? But now with that LMS data in particular, if they're using attendance, if they're using grade books, we can feed all of this in near real time and use the data here to do these calculated traits. So when somebody hits, hey, they've missed 25% of the meeting so far, we want that to be a threshold for us. We can proactively get all of our engagement tools within Element working towards helping that student and identifying that student maybe before their faculty member is able to flip that switch, or a resident assistant or whomever. So really, really important that we bring in all of these signals in a first-party way so you can leverage all of the power of segmentation around this.
All right. So, I mean, the last thing that we've kind of been mentioning around is this proactive outreach component. And Eric showed a peek of how we can do that today with this, like with our signals and the segmentation. So Element is very dynamic. New data comes in, we're evaluating that user every single time that new data comes in. And if they fall into a particular segment, now we can kick off whatever workflows and whatever engine that we need. And then if we have now, again, more signals around courses, we can kind of feed that in as well. It doesn't matter what those signals are. We are now able to listen to them, combine them together, and then move that student through and now be proactive in reaching out to them if there's specific components. And the idea of personal alerts are, again, something that we are really excited around the notifications that we're bringing in. And as part of that, now they can get notifications everywhere. But students get the alerts based on their specific journey, right? So we're tying in those alerts based on the signals that we're getting in about that student and not just general components in there. So that's kind of the whole flow of how we think about AI for student success. And you can see that portals are a big part of that, but we talked a lot about the different use cases that Element can now accomplish as part of this holistic way. But that AI really needed more context. It needed the context of courses and enrollment and the academic journey in order to bring that in so it can make advising possible, so it can make kind of the student journey possible, so it can nudge the student along to take different things as we build those goal-oriented AI assistants in there. So that's why we're really excited, and we're going to take a couple of questions. I feel like we have a little bit of time,
yeah.
So we specifically let time for the end for this.
We got some back here.
Oh.
Hi, good afternoon. Can you paint a picture for us how this process will roll out across an institution about managing and maintenance of the content? Is it a decentralized process, or is it run by one department in an institution? How do you see that and training people to get them all up to speed to do all this?
So, I mean, the answer is, of course, it depends, right? It depends because if you're integrating your SIS data on your LMS, then that's going to be your source of truth of that information. So that's going to come in once we build the integration, then that's done. So you manage that in your SIS or LMS. Now, if you're thinking about how do I think about the interventions or the communications on those, for example, workflows and tasks, well, you already have processes for that right now. And if you don't, then you'll be a change management internally so you can get your teams or get your organization to think about how do we want to manage this process. And then you bake the process into Element. So I guess, like I said, it depends, but the majority of institutions are going to start thinking about having those roles that are responsible for that right now kind of step in and work in Element in order to map to a digital process rather than, I guess that's the end of it. But I don't know, it would depend. So we don't have a clear answer for that, but we see it, whoever is doing that right now, they're the ones who are going to just carry that over and do it in Element with more automations and obviously get more help with AI.
Yeah, I want to first say thank you for the exciting new news and the support for student success out there in these applications. I'm still trying to get my head wrapped around all these various different parts, and I've got probably 50 million questions, but when will we actually start to see this, that we can actually start implementing parts of this within our current Element environment?
So assistants, we turned assistants on if you were a previous BoltBot customer. Today, you've got assistants right now, so if you haven't logged in yet, surprise. You'll also have discovery. So those two pieces are available to the existing folks that had the BoltBot feature enabled in Element already. As far as some of these other things, contact tasks and portals are down the road. They are soon. The other piece that will come alongside portals is the networks. And we sort of glossed over that a little bit, but that is a really interesting use case as well, where right now, right, your student records have a single assignee, and that's more or less as a result of our legacy as an admissions platform, right? So you have your admissions counselor, and that's the record assignee. But as you move through into student success, you've got
even beyond that.
And beyond is financial aid advisor, maybe a resident assistant or an academic advisor, all those faculty members that are part of the courses that you're in, right? So the way we're thinking about networks is similar to the way we think about the family relationships in Element right now, except now those users can be, those students can be related to what we call an internal user, right? A staff or staff login on Element.
Yep.
So now, and you can define those roles. So one thing we're not going to do is pick a bunch of roles for you to choose from. You guys can define, hey, on our campus, these are the 5 network roles we want. On this other institution, these are the 10 that we want for our students, and be able to mix and match those together. That will come alongside portals as well. So we've got a couple of things you can jump in right now today and start using and start leveraging, namely assistance and discovery.
And subtasks and task and
Yep.
case management, like we're doing a lot. And the workflows that Eric just showed you today, those are available today, right? So you can do the workflows, you can send communications, you can trigger things off of that. When we talk about portals and courses, like we're talking about, just a couple of months here. Like we said fall, maybe late fall, like during around. So if you're planning to say, hey, I need to dedicate some time or resources to start thinking about this, plan around that time frame.
Thank you. I had a question about the discovery. On the internal side, when you showed it, at the top of the thread, it said, this chat, unknown user sort of thing. If an applicant or student was logged in to Element or single sign-on, whichever, would that be associated with their student
Yes.
record? So when you go to view that student record in Element, you can go and see their chat history.
Yes, exactly.
Awesome.
So that's an anonymous use. It works similar to conversations if you think about that. Yeah.
So one thing on that that we didn't is that we didn't actually showcase in this session. We were going to showcase it tomorrow, but I'll see if I can get it to trigger here. Is the ability to capture lead capture in a lead capture form or in an RFI right within the discovery experience. So in that case, it would be a conversion. It might start anonymous, but when they submit that form, we would attach that, again, just like conversations, right?
Yeah.
So think of discovery as kind of almost another conversation channel.
To follow up on his question, will there be triggers available in workflows for if a student is asking questions to the
Great
assistant?
question. Yes, that's natural. So yes, the answer is yes, but they're not there today. It would be interesting to kind of understand a little bit more about what are some of the things that you're thinking about that you'd want to trigger based on, and we can talk about like, hey, you can extract intent from those questions, you can extract sentiment and a few other things that can kind of trigger things internally. But
Are we going to be able to see the threads from the personal assistants as well?
I'm sorry?
The threads from the personal assistants, will we be able to see those on their records as well?
Yeah, so just like if you're using BoltBot today, the assistants are just other agents within conversations.
Yep.
So it's part of the shared conversation.
yeah. So assistants, if you think about this, is like we had BoltBot before, and BoltBot was just one assistant, and it was a generalized assistant. Now you can have hundreds of them, but they all kind of operate within the conversations module.
So here, right, within conversations, you can see that Penny started, and it actually will tell me when it switched assistant. So student assistant is changed to dean, the academic advisor. And of course, if there was a human handoff involved in this, where either the assistant couldn't help or the student wanted to engage with a human agent on the live support channel, they could, live support, live chat, messenger. They could do that, and again, it's all a single thread, both types of agents in there.
One of the things that you're noticing in here is that the audio component, there is a transcription to that as well. So you can see that you don't have to play the audio. Like it will transcribe everything in there. So you can look at that thread through the transcription.
You kind of mentioned this, but is there a handoff to an actual person from the assistants instead of just assistant to another assistant? And do you build that when, do you build the use case when that happens?
Yeah, so the assistants will, in fact, that very first question I asked, the first thing Penny said was, would you like to talk to someone from financial aid? I could have said yes, and that would have actually executed a human handoff, so to speak. And within conversation settings, we actually have the rules that you can set up where you can actually say, hey, when the handoff intent is around this thing, financial aid, I want you to do this. So maybe that's assign that conversation to Ardis, right? Or the financial aid team. And if the intent is around dropping a course, I want it to go to another, I want that conversation assigned to somebody else or handed off to
Can you open that up really quick, Eric? Because that's an interesting use case. And it's a very powerful one. Not a lot of you are using these rules yet. Let's see. Okay, so here you see that there is intent types, and you can basically build in natural language, you can say what the intent type is. You can say, student asked about building Y, right? And it will, when a conversation comes in and it says hand it off to a human, it will go in and it will pull the whole list of those intents that you have built in the rules in here, and dynamically will pick the best one that that conversation or that last conversation was about and the intent of that question or the last message was about. So it's dynamically doing that matching. And LLMs and large language models and AI is really, really good at that, to understand nuance and to understand, so it makes that connection dynamically. So go in here and add those handoff intents, and you're going to see that they're going to trigger off different rules that you're adding in based on dynamically now, right? When you hand it off, you'll pick the right rule on that handoff. So you don't have to mix and match yourself. You will just pick one that it finds is best. Any more questions? There's one more right here.
One of the AI assistants that you mentioned was a peer advisor.
Yes.
I'm just wondering what knowledge base you're using for a peer advisor.
So the knowledge base is the same knowledge base as the rest of Element, and you can scope that down to a particular set of documents or to a particular set of categories or whatever you want. But the personality and the job description and the things that peer advisor is instructed they can do and how they can help, those instructions are different, right? So that's what makes it a peer advisor. So it can still have access to campus resources. It can still have access to different to documents and things like that. But it will provide that information a little bit differently. And I can understand how you can say, well, how does it know what the campus experience is like, right? So that's where we can now tweak the knowledge base a little bit more, and there is, we have whole websites that are geared towards student life, right? So it will take that information and, tweak it so it's available, in that same language from a student's perspective.
Yeah, when I was in student affairs, we had a whole section of our website that was like blog posts from students and from like student leaders and people in clubs and orgs. So like that would be something that I would expect, hey, we want to load that sort of web content into the peer advisor, and we don't want Penny, the financial aid person, talking
To have access
to
to
have
that,
access to that, right? So
Yeah.
these specialized categories and specialized knowledge to really hone that in. And again, we're under the hood saying, hey, as a peer advisor, we want you to be a little more relaxed, a little more, you know,
provide
one-to-one.
advice, and
Yeah.
there's some inherent knowledge that this, huge large language models have around it.
And we had time for one more.
One more.
No.
We're not scraping social media, not today.
I kind of have a question. So I'm a head softball coach, and I'm also in admissions. So how does this integrate with athletics and like recruiting and on working with coaches and all of that stuff? Is that a good question?
So when I was on the institutional side, our coaches were in Element, and this was like 5 years ago. So your coaches can certainly be in Element. They can have different profile templates, and we won't go there because that's a whole nother presentation. But like what they're doing, and that's a great use case for when we introduce the networks, right? Like even at the recruiting side, there may be kind of this network type structure that we want. You have the admissions counselor and the coach who's actively recruiting and that sort of thing. So lots of things there, but yeah, absolutely, they can be in there, they can engage. They can have certain permissions, for sure.
And they can have like athletic assistants as well, right?
We do. We did an athletic assistant. We solved if you use Sidearm, is that the athletics website? Yeah. If you use Sidearm, we solved their sitemap issue, so you can actually index your Sidearm sites and get like your rosters and stuff, so your athletic coach or your athletic assistant can talk about outcomes and how did we do against Muhlenberg last week? Whatever.
Awesome. Gentlemen, thank you. Let's hear it for
All right.
Eric and Ardis.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.